All right, now we're starting to put the motor together. We're going to show you how to do this right. You can use plastic gauge to check your bearing clearances, but to really know what you got, you need to use some micrometers. So what I have an inside micrometer, and then a really good outside micrometer. This is a Lufkin I got off of eBay, real nice and reasonable. What you do is you take this, put your bearing in here, clean everything up, put your bearing in there, torque it down, then you put this in here and you twist this inside mic gauge till it's real nice and snug, and then you roll it out so you don't scratch your bearing. Then you know what the diameter of your bearing is. You mic this, and I mic'd it, and it's just a little bit over the clearance. When you take and you mic this, and then you mic your shaft, I come out with 0.0013, 1 3/10. So it's pretty snug. I'd rather it be 2, but beggars can't be choosers. It'll be okay. So anyway, that's how you do it the right way. Set your inside mic here, mic the crankshaft, subtract the 2, 1 3/10 thousandths, 0013 is my bearing clearance. So now that we have this part done, we'll go ahead and put the camshaft in. And then I'm going to work on putting the crankshaft, setting the crankshaft in. So let's get this camshaft out of the box. Comes with a little label to remind you to use an oil additive break-in, which I've already purchased, found some on eBay pretty reasonable. It comes nice, sealed, pre-packaged, so it's nice and clean. What we're going to do is we're going to bring her on out of the box, out of the package here, and just slide it into the block. And it's real nice and clean, so I'm not gonna mess with success. You know, oops. I pre-cleaned all the other parts to get ready for installation. So we'll use cam lube on the lobes themselves, and I'm using automatic transmission fluid on the cam journal, just trying to use some kind of a decent assembly lubrication. But you don't want the cam lube on the journals. You want regular engine oil or transmission fluid or whatever assembly lube you're going to use on your cam bearing. Okay, so we got that. We'll get the second journal and we'll kind of get that shaft started, and then that just makes everything a whole lot easier as you go together. Now we can start working that shaft in there. going to slip the cam gear on just enough to get it to line things up. So I can use the cam gear to take that camshaft in there without hitting the cam bearings. You don't want to hit those cam bearings. You want to keep those in good shape. All right, there we go. Got the cam in. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get that plate on there and get that snugged up. But we'll set the crank in before we do that. Now the other thing I want to show you, we got our plugs in place. And if you look way down there, you can see I drilled it, I countersunk it, and then I put a 20 thousandths hole in that, so that'll oil the distributor gear and the chain. Got the plugs back here in, got them torqued up, drilled this out, beveled down in there. I don't know if you can see it very good, but I beveled that. And then the opening there, I chamfered that opening so that we'll get our oil flow nice and smooth and no cavitation. Putting in freeze plugs is pretty simple. I put some black silicone around the outside edge of the plug, used a socket and extension and just drove those in there. You can kind of move your socket to get one that fits fairly snug, and then you can put a little bit of pressure whichever way you need to as you're driving those in. And then I left this one open. I'm going to put a block heater in it because that makes life a lot easier in the winter to have a block heater. Silicone, you don't want to use much of it. You want to be real careful. The only places for silicone around the freeze plugs and right back here on this two-piece seal where they meet. Other than that, maybe on the intake gasket right here where it meets, on the valley. But other than that, I don't use silicone. It gets into things. It causes trouble. I am not a big fan of it. I've dealt with the problems of too much silicone in the wrong places, and I'm not a fan. So use silicone sparingly. Okay, I'm going to take it apart and get ready to set that crank in there. Okay, on these Ford bearings, small block, and you can see it's a pretty small block. See how it's got a groove right there? It's got a groove and that's the top bearing. That will go, and this here is the thrust bearing because you can see it's got these two sides. Thrust bearing goes in the middle, line up. I'll put the tab kind of down there close, and then I use the wood part of the hammer to just kind of tap her into place, and then try to make everything line up on clutch on the block. And that's nice right there. Fits real good. And here in a little bit, we'll check the end plane once we get that crank in there and make sure that those are seated properly. I've already cleaned out the saddles. I took the block and I cleaned it out super good with a brush and went to the car wash and used hot soapy water on it and just made sure that everything was nice and clean. And then when you look down through here, make sure all those slots line up with your oil holes. There's your oil holes. So you got oil coming down on the big hole, going back up to the cam on the small hole, going through that groove to lubricate the cam, as well as the cross drilling on the crankshaft to get your rod journals oiled and your main bearings oiled. So you want that groove, make sure it lines up. And once again, these are King bearings, K-I-N-G, King. They're aluminum silicone, and I have really good luck with them. Obviously, they're what I choose to use. Everybody's got their own preference out of their own experience. But I've had the best luck with these. All right, now we've got the rear seal in. We took the rope seal out. This thing was had a rope seal in it. This is a Viton rubber seal. The lip goes towards the oil. Slinger will sit right in here. We're going to lube those bearings up and set the crank. Now, I just, using the automatic transmission fluid just because it's nice and handy. It's a high detergent. It's light. It gets in places. I think it's a pretty reasonable assembly lube for putting the block together. And I always pre-lube. So we'll be going back and pre-lubing this block before we even fire it up. And that way it'll fire up with complete oil pressure. And we're using a 1540 Shell Rotella T for the properties that it has. That will help with the camshaft break-in, and then we'll continue to run it because it has the properties to keep the cam and the lifters alive. Okay, now remember this thrust bearing, we've got to get it lined up in the block, and we'll do that by tapping on the, whoops, I used the wrong thing there. Get talking. What we're going to do now, we're going to have to pop this on the front here to line up that thrust bearing. Make the two halves match. Okay, so we'll take this. We'll go back this way. Back one more time. And that ought to seat that thrust bearing in there real nice. All right, look at that. One hand, that's pretty good. That means that our nothing can be too bad when you can do it by one hand. That means our line bore's pretty decent. That means our bearing clearances are indeed what we mic'd out at 1.3 thousandths, 1 3/10, 0013. Real good. So now what we want to do is we want to check our input. Now that can be done a couple of ways. We'll set up a dial indicator here on the end to make that, and then we'll check it out. You can do it other ways, but the dial indicator is the best. This is a magnetic block, and it breaks down for storage. So you screw your magnetic block in there, and you put your magnetic block over here where you can get a good purchase. You flip the lever over there to where it'll hold it nice and secure. And then we're going to put that dial indicator on the shaft here in just a wee bit. Just kind of make this hold for the second while we put our dial indicator on. All right, it was a fight, but we got it. What you have to do to set your thrust, you have to take the bearing out, take the crank out, take the two shells, clamp them together, and then you sand them on 400 grit sandpaper on a flat surface. So I sanded both sides as equal as I could, took about 1.5 thousandths off of it, three quarters each side, with thousandths off each side. And now it's right at 4,000. Spec is 4,000s to 8,000s. So we're within spec now, but it took a little bit, but we got it. So now what we do is we torque it down and just use a good torque wrench. You can buy fancy stuff, but believe it or not, the old beam style wrench is the most accurate. Cheapest, most accurate. I got this SK. SK is a great brand. They're good solid stuff. It's accurate as can be. So get you a beam wrench. Don't buy the big expensive stuff. This is more accurate anyway. So we'll get these torqued down. Okay, you'll see specs are 60 to 70 foot-pounds. I take and put a piece of tape right there at 70. That way I'm not always trying to read the lines when I'm torquing. I just know exactly kind of where I'm at. I'll go in a couple steps, go 40, and then I'll go up to the 70. Now this oddball looking bolt is a pickup because we got the Fox oil pan. And that pickup bolts to that. Maybe we'll go in 3 steps. We'll go 40, 60, 70. All right, we're gold. See how she spins now? Still spins one hand. Real nice and easy. Look at that. That's pretty good. So you'll see stuff that's got looser clearances do that, but that's pretty good for 1.3 thousandths, 1 3/10. All right, it's getting pretty late here. I'm going to shut her down for tonight. We'll see if we get a chance to work on it tomorrow. Thanks for sticking around. Share with your friends. Teach your kids. Man, I tell you, it'd be awesome if you could make a motorsport hobby, roundy round racing or drag racing. I prefer drag racing. More affordable by far. You can run what you brung. You can throw stuff together with whatever you can scrounge up, and it's anyway. And there's good folks. There's good folks, you know. So anyway, love your family, love your kids, love your wife, and subscribe, tell your friends about it, and we'll catch you guys again.